Thanks for watching. If you like this video, then subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss out on more content.
Arushi, thank you so much for joining us. It's great that you can reconnect with us on Drive with Erica.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. It's always a pleasure.
So, the last time you were with us, you shared your backstory on how you survived the tragic Nepal earthquake in 2015, waking up at the epicenter of the second largest natural disaster in the world had witnessed. And that was your trigger moment that directed you into the world of mental health and wellness. So coming out of a devastating situation, like a loss of a loved one or a breakup of a marriage or loss of a job, how does one identify a positive way forward coming out of a devastating situation?
You rightly said, loss can be experienced firstly in many different ways. A devastating situation is a devastating situation, and we cannot, you can never really pinpoint what is the threshold of pain that a person is feeling, because for somebody a loss of job may be monumental, for somebody a loss of a loved one may be monumental, and for somebody a breakup. So I think answering your question, before identifying a positive path, it is important for us, Erica, to accept. And that is the key thing that we all need to learn, because without acceptance, there is going to be no forward journey. Acceptance follows a couple of things that I'd like all of our listeners to hear today. Shock, which we all feel. Then denial, because you can't come to terms with what has happened. After denial, because of time, and time is a very relative, there is acknowledgement. You come to terms with acknowledging, okay, this is my reality spectrum. And after acknowledgement comes acceptance. When there is acceptance, a human being is faced by a couple of emotions during acceptance, which are hurt, betrayal, sadness, guilt, a lot of guilt. What could have I done? What should have I done? And this then follows the healing, Erica. And I assure all of our listeners here today that there is healing. I have experienced it. And I tend to experience the healing almost every minute in the profession that we're in. So I can assure you that there is healing in any situation of life that you're in. You have to seek the healing, and the healing will come to you. Once there is healing, Erica, healing requires direction. And that's when a positive path is required to overcome what we are going through. A few ways once we reach the healing phase that do help figure this direction out is support. Support gives safety, which is the only thing human beings need. Right? Your loved one makes you feel safe. Your job makes you feel safe. Your partner makes you feel safe. It comes down to safety. So support systems, activate yourself. You reach out to the ones you feel close to, but everybody else, when a person is grieving, please don't feel it's going to be awkward. How am I going to address with them? No, be there, show your support verbally, non-verbally, present. You can sometimes just show your support by going and being there with a person or calling them up and letting them just be. So support, find your support systems, give support, ask for support. Family therapy really helps here. Finding also therapy that works for you. And most definitely, therapy is the tool. Today, we have numerous people that we can talk with. We are soon going to be doing something together to make sure that access is increased to the marginal classes, so that everybody has some tools that they can take for themselves. Therapy really helps move your thought processes into the present moment, because a lot of wallowing happens, and wallowing creates a circle of lack, which then is just a downward spiral, and you will self-defeat yourself to such a place, Erica, that you'll exhaust yourself. And if you've exhausted yourself, how will you make sure you hold on to the hope which is there? So I feel therapy will help, support systems help, and then the choices, which is what I want to talk about here. The choice you make in that moment. We always have a choice, Erica, and we choose. Like we were sharing, I went through something extremely difficult yesterday, but the choice is that I'm going to make sure that that has hope for many. right? We need to make a choice for our healing to work in a positive direction. And
Absolutely.
via those choices, garner the motivation and look towards what were our future goals before this? What do we want to do? And then help piece all of them together. I
Mhm.
hope that could help and provide some guidance in life.
This one's important, I think, for a lot of us. It affects us different through different stages of our life. Sometimes we get thrown into a toxic environment. Now, it could be either at work or in a personal relationship or at home or just, within society. How do we, first of all, identify that it's toxic? And secondly, how can we insulate ourselves from it? Sometimes we are because of circumstances, we are forced to be in it. How can we insulate ourselves or protect ourselves from a toxic environment?
Thank you so much, Erica, for firstly talking about such relevant things like toxicity, which so many of us don't even acknowledge in the first place. So, firstly, how do we identify that what we are going through is toxic? Now, anything that is draining you of your energy and is making you feel exhausted rather than empowered is your first identifying factor that you have put yourself into something which is going to lower your energy quotient. What happens when you feel fatigued? Your body shuts down. Your vitals on automatically don't work at the pace that they're generally working at. So anything that is draining you, and if you're feeling this fatigue resulting from a loop or a situation that you're in prolonged, that is your first identifying factor of toxicity. Second, you don't feel yourself. We
Mm.
know when we feel ourselves. We know when we feel comfortable. When you feel any certain sort of discomfort and you're required to do something you're not, behave in a way you're not, or you keep coming back into a pattern where you ask yourself, why am I doing what I am doing? That is your second flag to toxicity. The third, we all know घबराहट, right? हम
Yeah.
सबको घबराहट महसूस होती है. We all feel anxiety.
Hmm.
When you are in a constant, when you're finding yourself in a constant frame of feeling anxious, and most of the times you tell yourself, I don't know why I'm feeling like this. I don't know why I am feeling so, listless, restless, fearful. Anxiety and stress manifest into our body in multiple ways. You're feeling loss of sleep, appetite, disassociation, just anxious. This is your third flag that you are in something toxic. So these are the three first ways of identifying toxicity.
Right. Wow, that is fantastic. I mean, not not oftentimes do we pay attention to these triggers. So, we really have to understand that, hey, this is not working for me. I just need to sort of, retract, I should say, look back and look ahead as how I can change my environment about me and make those choices, like you said again.
Erica, I'd even like to add one more thing over here. One question we all need to ask ourselves is, how am I feeling today?
Hmm.
How am I feeling right now? And ask yourself that when in moments of discomfort and in moments of comfort. So when you ask yourself, how am I feeling? You will get an answer. Am I feeling healthy or am I feeling unhealthy? And if you're feeling unhealthy in any circumstance, then there is something that needs to be done. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about.
Right. So when we're in a toxic situation, though, and like I said, sometimes, we're not able to get out of one or we're forced to be in one. Are we forced to be in one? That's a question as well. How do we insulate ourselves from it? How do we protect ourselves? Do we, considering that we are in a situation? I mean, if you look about us on a larger scale, we're sitting in a toxic world today. We've got a pandemic, we've got pollution, we've got climate crisis, all of that. How do you protect yourself?
Like you said, there is always a choice, Erica. But we were not taught as a generation that we can hone our choices. We've always taught that we need to follow instructions, follow people, follow ideals. So it becomes very difficult for people to also know that if I'm feeling unhealthy, there's something I can do about it. But you can, today you can, that make that choice. Firstly, we need to identify that we're in a toxic loop. Secondly, we need to have a conversation with ourselves about how badly do we want this to go away from us, and make that choice that yes, today I decide I am going to do something about this. Boundary setting. I understand I understand that most of the times for so many people, let's say it's even domestic abuse that somebody is going through,
Yep.
right? You're getting beaten up, right? How do we say, oh, I have a choice, I will leave this man? No. Your society, your surroundings, you don't have that choice. But you know what you have the choice of? Boundaries. That means when you're getting beaten, the emotions that you're going to drive yourself into, the loop that you're going to choose to feel. And yes, then how are you going to make sure you report this incident, making sure that you do it, making sure that you have the courage, because if you keep being in the loop of your toxicity, nobody is going to get you out of it. So I
Yeah.
would definitely say boundaries, Erica. It is very important for us to know how to say no
Mhm.
to what is happening around us, with us, but to even to ourselves. No, I am not going to take any more of this. And the power of boundaries, and first defining the boundary with yourself, is the first step to get out of anything that is toxic.
Right.
Once you define the boundary with yourself, moving it to positive self-talk is going to change the scope to hope,
Mhm.
knowing that you can and you will, because you've chosen yourself for the first time. And self-care and choosing yourself is not selfish.
Right. I love that. I love that. There's a very positive note as well. Scope to hope. I like that as well. A time to find therapies that work for us and ways to do that. We've heard of music therapy, color therapy, changing your lifestyle therapy. I love retail therapy. That's my favorite. But uh, can you share? Can you share with us, different kinds of therapies? How do we pick one that works best for us?
Wonderful. So I feel for all of our listeners, when we talk about therapy, it's important to understand that there are different schools of therapy. That means the techniques that the therapists follow are different, and how they are moving your thoughts from unhelpful to helpful, from rigid to flexible, is what these different kind of therapies, the different kind of therapies do. So therapy can be looked as firstly as an eclectic approach. Eclectic means a mix of therapies, mix of schools. Once we identify what the person is going through and what are the short term and the long term goals that we are working on, is when the therapist decides, hey, I can also merge certain tools of therapy so that they make a better impact to the person. So it's very important for all of us to understand, when you go in for a therapy session, please be as detailed as you can about your history. Your
Mhm.
history is going to help the therapist identify which are the different tools that will help you. We have rational emotive behavioral therapy, that is REBT, which works on thoughts, cognitions, patterns. It is also an excellent way for you to become a better version of yourself if you're even stuck somewhere in decision making, or you
Right.
want to understand more about how you can become more efficient with your day-to-day, living, communication. Then there is CBT. Then, like you said, we have art therapy, we have music therapy. Art therapy really helps one express. And so a lot of times we feel certain things, we go through certain experiences, but we are fearful about communicating about them because we don't know how. Art therapy opens up a universal channel, a channel of communication, and art helps you release. So what
Yeah.
art therapy really does, it helps with a lot of pent up release that then transforms into healing, right? Because
Right.
once it is out, it then goes back into healing. So,
Mhm.
for everybody here, how do you find the therapy that works for you? Go to your therapy session fully open minded, share your history, understand what it's from the therapist to achieve my short term and long term goals that we have put down. What are we going to be using? A lot of therapists use particular tools, but more often than usual, an eclectic approach of understanding what the client is going through, and then using a mix of schools is what we follow even at Trijog. Every case is very individually handled. We understand what the person is going through, how you're going through, and then we put down a beautiful plan of action wherein we infuse different kinds of therapies to make sure that each of the benefit of each of the schools and tools is received by that human being in the ways and areas of life that that person requires. So yes,
Okay.
and another thing for our listeners, if you've not had a good experience with your therapist, understand that you're meeting somebody for the first time, and most of the times it works out beautifully, but sometimes you may have a disconnect, and that is okay. Try in other therapists at Trijog. In the case you would require a transfer, we make sure in-house we do it with you, for you, and it may sometimes take you 2-3 times to find your therapist, but do go through that journey, and I assure you, you will find the right fit, because it takes two to tango, and that is the truth of everything.
Well, that's right. I mean, I got to agree. It's like right swiping and finding the right therapist for you. It's like the match. You need to find one that works for you. The importance of having an inner circle. Arushi, I have to talk to you about that. That 3 a.m. buddy kind of thing, someone whom we could call any time of the day or night. Talk to us about the importance of having an inner circle to help us, through some of the tough times in our life.
I think, Erica, having an inner circle is everything. I was in a conversation with a gentleman the other day, and he said, if there's any life advice, and I generally ask people these questions when I meet them, what is the one life advice you would give me? And he said, the only thing I have proved to be worthy in all of my life is knowing and have been able to count the 5 friends that I have in my life.
That's right.
I don't have best friends. I don't even have good friends. I have my 5 core, and then everybody else is a wonderful friend who exists in my universe. But is that a person that I can align my trust with? Who can show me my own reflection, who can talk with me about the good, bad, ugly, and will be there in times of celebration and need. It is so important to have these 5 people, because the people you surround yourself with are the ones who also add to who you become, who add 80% of what you become and who you become.
I so agree. I mean, you need somebody to tell you, listen, either to get off your high horse or make sure you get onto the right path, or listen, hang on, intervention. Whether it be, it's
Exactly.
like, I think, someone to call up and say, you stop carrying on about, how, crazy your day is, but I think you've got the tools to go ahead and attack it. So important. I just love my 3 a.m. buddies, and I have an inner circle. I don't care about having hundreds and thousands of followers, because that means nothing, honestly. But to have that, I feel secure. I think, and I would want, like, my Radio One listener to understand the importance of having that inner circle. If you don't have one now, go ahead, work at it, and make sure you create that little protective circle, around you, because that will hold you in good stead. I think this is important for us going forward, into the new year. 2022 is looking at us in the face, and we've had some really tough couple of years, but don't sweat the small stuff. I constantly remind myself with that phrase, looking at the bigger picture. Does that help to manage your everyday stresses? What are your comments to that?
Of course it does. And I think we need to keep repeating this. Don't sweat the small stuff. So what if the deal didn't close today? So what if you got late for that meeting? So what if you didn't get the job that you were really, really working towards? So what if you couldn't make it for that audition? So what if that event got canceled? So what? Sit down and open your eyes, and when you're in this loop, look at the universe. Have the clouds stopped moving? No. Has the sun stopped coming back up? No. Has the moon forgotten to come out this night? No. We need to remind ourselves with the universe constantly that everything is ever changing. That present moment where you didn't get the deal does not exist anymore. That present moment where you didn't get that job does not exist anymore. That present moment where you had that fight, which you're so disturbed about, does not exist anymore. That moment has become the past. We need to
Absolutely.
keep
Yeah.
refocusing ourselves back into the present moment. Sit down when you're feeling like this. Take a deep breath in. Open your eyes and ask yourself. Now I'm going to ask you this, Erica, so let's do it.
Okay.
What are the 5 things that you can see?
About me today? I can
What are the
see
5 things you can see around you?
around you. I can see a blue sky. I can see, because I'm sitting by my window, I can see my cup of coffee. I can see my to-do list, a long to-do list. I can see well, I can see my neighbor popping out the window, and what else can I see about me? Oof, I can see my phone flashing,
Oh,
all the little,
wonderful.
yeah.
Wonderful. What are the 4 things you can hear right now?
I can hear you. I can hear I can hear some the crow. I can hear
Yourself?
I can hear myself. Absolutely, I can hear myself, and I can hear busy traffic. And that's it.
Wonderful.
Yep.
What are the 3 things you can touch right now?
I can touch all the objects about me. I can touch. I can tap myself,
Lovely.
and
So your
yep,
mic, your
yep. I can tap myself. I can touch the objects about me, and that's pretty much it. I can touch my phone.
okay, lovely. So you're saying your phone, the object in your hand, and maybe your table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are the 2 things that you can taste right now?
Taste.
Yeah.
Okay, my sip of coffee, and well, that's it. I've just had my coffee and sugar.
Lovely. So coffee and sugar are the 2 things that you can taste right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing, what is the one thing that you can smell right now?
It's just me. I can just
Your
smell
perfume?
me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's a reason we did this. I want to ask you, for the last 30 seconds, whatever was on your mind, did it go away? And were you just thinking about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? What can you see? What can
Yes.
you hear? What can
Yes.
you touch? Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
Yes.
So what you essentially did was grounded yourself. And this is
Uh-huh.
so important for us to learn this technique. It's called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique, which helps us get ourselves back into the present moment, which is exactly what we need to do to not sweat the small stuff.
Wow. Okay. This is a great exercise. I think it's very meditative, because then you kind of, you're focusing and you're bringing it to you, to the center. Right. I love that. And that's such a fantastic tool. Now, here we are sitting at a situation where a lot of the children are going back to school, and it now boils down to, managing that as well, kind of readjusting from homeschooling to going back to school. Not just that, the academic pressures, have multiplied, I think, in many ways, adjusting to different ways of, attending school, and then the coping mechanisms. That hasn't seemed, I'll say it again, that doesn't seem to have gone away. So how do the kids, manage the stress without allowing it to overpower them and their lives? And when things get super stressful, how can they reach out for help?
So I think, Erica, the main thing we need to talk about here and bring our attention back to is what is being fed into our children, which is molding their perceptions and perspectives. How has our education system been? Like we were talking about just earlier today, what does our education system really rile you up to be? It tells you that you have to academically be top 5 or top 10. Only then you have self-worth enough to become something in life. Why is our education system still, with so much progressivity that we have been able to achieve as a world as altogether, why are we still not encouraging vocations where you can actually, where you can be fantastic at what you're doing and still be accepted for it? Not only accepted, but celebrated for it. We are not celebrated for anything other than grades in our society. You are
I
looked down
agree.
upon.
I have to jump in and share, this is personal. It happened about 7 or 8 years ago when my child was switching from his primary to his secondary school. And the first day of the school, when I went to meet the teacher, she had, she says, on my blackboard, she says, on my whiteboard, there'll be the list of the top 10 kids in the class in terms of academics, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And she looks at my son and she says, I know you and I know your worth or whatever, but your name has to be on that list. And that got me thinking. That was my trigger point to get my son to change his school, because I didn't want him to go to school and have a look at these 10 names on that whiteboard every single day. And then, either have to aspire to get into it, or once he's in it, have to aspire and struggle to constantly be on it. And what about the other kids who can't make it to that list? Why would they have to come to school every day and look at that list of top 10 and either be reminded of the fact that, number one, they can't get onto that list? So we have these stresses. They're very, very prevalent in our schools today, and I'm really desperately hoping that in the past 7 years things have changed with that school. I will not name names.
I fully agree with you. How about, Erica? We all turned around the conversation too. My mamu says, the kids who are the extreme toppers, the ones who get 90s and hundreds, they're either doctors or engineers, which is great. Sure, you require that kind of education precision. The ones who get, and this is what we should be telling our children as well, the ones who get from 70 to 80 percent somewhere, they're the ones who really work extremely hard and will be the IITians or IIMs. Then we have the 50 to 60, 60 to 50 graders who actually become the CEOs around the world. I would like all of our listeners to go pull up a list of the top CEOs around the world and see their grades. They will all be between 50 to 60. And then the ones below 50 are the ones that actually the entire world is working with and for. They're the people, they're the businessmen, because they know a way out. They knew that, if you do some jugaad, something here, something there, you'll figure it out.
Yeah,
This is what we
smart.
need to be teaching our people.
Absolutely.
Yes, that it
I
is
agree
you. And you are soul and you are whole, and our parents, like Eric and I are saying, please hear this today. If your children are in institutions wherein grades define their self-worth, or there is any kind of pressure to achieve or be on a rank, go to those schools, sit with those systems. We all need to do this together, and it will only come if we start the movement together. And let your child know that your child's self-worth defines his or her success, not the other way around. Success does not define our self-worth. Everybody, our self-worth and our self-image defines our life, our path, our everyday, and everything we are today and will become.
Well, that's a wonderful note to wrap up our chat. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful chatting with you, Arushi. Keep it positive. We shall connect real soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Erica. On that parting note, I would like to share with everybody in a personal incident yesterday, being the third runners in the country, day in and day out, helping lives and making sure that mental health with Trajog reaches far and wide. I had a loss in my family, and this was somebody from close quarters because of exam pressure that was coming from the school and not from one's home. Now, if that could take away a life, I think we all need to be mindful about what our children are listening to, how we are guiding our children, and how we're opening up space for safe conversations at our homes, with our teachers, and every day with ourselves. I'd like all of our listeners to just follow 10 seconds of silence for Aryan, my dearest beloved child, and for everybody out there in India who loses their life to suicide every 3 seconds. Erica, could I please request you to ask all of the audience to send healing and hope, because that is there in the world, and that is why we tirelessly live our lives every day. Thank you, Erica.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being so honest and being, and sharing that with us. As always, great to have you on the show. We shall connect with you soon.
Thank you, and see you.
One world, your station.